the array as well. Who did that? Who made it take it out of the array? Cool. Yeah, go ahead, John. What'd you do? Splice? Array.splice? Splice changes the contents of an array by removing existing elements and or adding new elements. Removing elements, that's what we want to do. Has a bunch of examples. Looks like you can do it with just one argument or two arguments or three. First argument, the index at which to start changing the array. So the index where our flick appears, right? Next, how many items you want to delete. Just the one, thanks. If you leave that out, it deletes from there to the end. And the third one is stuff that you can also add in its place, but we don't need to do that. So array.splice, start and delete count. So the array is this .flicks, right? .splice. The first argument is the index. I don't know what that is yet. I'll just throw I in there even though that doesn't exist yet. And the second argument is how many we want to delete. Well, we know that's one. Question is, how do we find I? Yeah. Say again? Map through the array and then see if it's that one? Or see, what'd you do, check the ID? Or just compare the things? Check the names? Okay. We want the ID to be the unique thing just in case two of them do match. But yeah, you could loop through and just see if they're the same thing. There is a slightly easier way. Anybody do it a different way? Yeah.
Because you have that list item, you can go through your array and find the index of that list item and then splice at that position that you found.
Unless you have move up and move down working, in which case that may not be the same.
Well, if you move that in the array, wouldn't that be the same?
So, okay, so you had the oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Okay. You could find the index of that li within the list.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you could do that.
What I had was just keeping the ID and the index. I think it was offset by one, but I had those like this.
You had both of them on the DOM?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not on the
Oh.
but I had them the same like everything. So the order in the array was the same as.
Okay, so if you reordered them, you changed the ID. Okay. Just in case the ID is something that comes from a database, I don't want to do that. But yeah, you could do that. Here's a really easy way that someone did this morning. Indexof. Anybody heard of that? So if we say this.flicks.indexof, well, we need the flick, right? If we had the flick inside here, we could do that and just get the index. But we don't. Darn it. We want to pass it in as an argument, but the only argument getting passed in is the event itself, which is getting passed in automatically. Speaking of which, this.flicks. I think that might explode. Let's just put something silly in there for now. And we can do that. Explode. Cannot read property indexOf of undefined. IndexOf of undefined. So indexOf of undefined means this.flicks is undefined. Why? I didn't bind it. When I added the event listener, yep, that's why we do it on purpose in class. So you get used to seeing that error and used to how do you fix it. So when we when we pass in this.removeFlick, we want to pass in a bound version of removeFlick. Right? But we also want to pass in more arguments besides the event. Well, guess what else bind can do? Besides changing the value of this, you can add some arguments to that function. So if you add more arguments to bind, all of those things will get passed in as arguments to the function. So I have the flick here inside render list item, right? So I can pass in the flick here and any number of other arguments, and they'll all get passed down to this dot remove flick. So remember, bind returns another function. It returns a new version of this function with this stuff bound to it, this stuff glued to it. So now it's a version of the same function, except this is what we want it to be. And now it's got this argument that's just going to travel with it everywhere. So I'll go ahead and spare you the trouble. It's going to make them the first arguments. The event's going to be the last one. If we want to prove that, let's throw a debugger in here. Remember, JavaScript doesn't enforce the number of arguments. Let's add something. Let's click delete. We hit our debugger. So we're inside the remove flick function. And inside a function, there's always a local variable called arguments, which gives you all of them in an array-like thing. Okay, argument 0 looks like it's the object with an ID and a name. The second one is the event. So flick comes first. So any arguments you pass in with bind get passed in at the beginning. And since it is an event handler, we know the event is always going to get passed in. It's going to get passed in last. Yeah, go ahead.
So theoretically, if I'm creating every one of my, I did it a different way. I create everything in render list. Theoretically, could I just pass along the stuff that I need to if I add the event listers in render list? So, like, say for example, I have fave. I want to pass through the whole container that I did, and then select
Pass through the what? I'm sorry.
the whole container. So for the whole
Like the div, or the DOM element.
yeah, can I just pass that through so I can easily change the color of it?
You can. We're going to do fave in just a sec. I'll show you how I did it. It might be easier. So now that we have this flick, we could search the flicks array for it, find the index of the flick. Set that to I. Or you can call it index if you want. This.flick splice at what position? Wherever we found this thing. How many things are we going to remove there? Just the one thing, thanks. Yep. Honestly, a lot of what you learn in this boot camp is how to do things you already know how to do a lot easier. I will go ahead and comment. Remove from the DOM. Remove from the array. I'd be pretty dang tempted to make those two separate methods, but I'm also okay with that. You'd always want to do them at the same time. And one of them could call the other as well, or this one could call both. They are just two lines. It's not that hard to understand, but I'm going to add a comment for right now anyway. I took out my debugger as well. Okay, so let's add it. The rock, transformers, bad boys 2. Let's delete transformers. Deleted. Let's check out our array. App.flicks. I only see 3. Okay, whatever. I don't know why I did that. App.flicks, they're the 2. First one's Bad Boys 2, second one, Transformers. Yep, it deleted the right one. Life is good. So, remove flicks from the array. Not too bad. In a perfect world, I would just remove it from the array and the DOM would update automatically. But we're not there yet.